Hey, on our podcast today, we're going to talk about the nationwide No Kings protest, and we're going to find some familiar faces behind all of this, because at the end of the day, the No Kings protests are really about we don't like Donald Trump, and we'll find that our teachers' unions and some other players are actively involved in funding and supporting and promoting all of this, which gets back to the larger question of why are the unions, our teachers' unions, who are supposed to be dedicated to children, why in the world are they involved in a political protest against the authoritarianism of our President Donald Trump? So this and a whole lot more on our podcast today.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
I'm not sure if we can provide more exciting content than we did in our last podcast when we launched the episode with naked bikers in Portland.
Oh, yeah, that was a classic.
I was trying to find something that would be at that level this week, but we're close. We had No Kings protests.
Yeah,
which might have included some naked protesters. I don't know. You never know what's going to happen when the left
maybe in Portland
when the left get together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was the big non-event of the century, and certainly from a logical perspective, hard to justify what their movement's even about, other than we hate Donald Trump and everything he stands for. But I don't know what your take was on that. I saw the leftist media was doing what they love to do and do naturally, which is lie. Evidently, there was a doctored photo from some completely other event that said these are No Kings protesters, I think in New York or LA or some liberal hub, but it wasn't even an accurate photo. It was from some other event, and they were trying to say that this was a massive, massive turnout, and I don't quite think it was. But anyway, your take on all the whole No Kings thing?
My take is when there's nothing you can really do to get a win, you've been taking an L for a loss for almost a year now, since November of 2024.
You're getting your brains beat out.
You gotta exercise that frustration somehow, right? So what you do is you get on the streets in a place in protest in a hospitable environment. There's the news media fawn over you. There's no tanks who's gonna roll over you. There's no one spraying pepper sprays, or you get a protest and hang out with your buddies and your fellow liberal buddies, and everyone's fawning over you, and it's a nice Saturday morning activities, and you gotta get the exercise, gotta get out there, right? Especially when you're in your
You brought up a good point earlier.
60-year-olds
in our pre-podcast, which we're also going to start doing the Ron Johnson Discipleship pre-podcast.
That's when we get all the bad ideas out.
All the added value. But it's interesting. The left that likes to promote diversity, right? Mm-hmm. Inclusion, all this kind of stuff. This looks like a breakout from the geriatric ward, at a nursing home or something like this. I mean, this looks really white and it looks really old. I mean, that's just what I see.
Well, that's what I think it was a CNN report that says, hey, I think the report actually called them Q-tips. Which I thought was a pretty good analogy. It's very visual.
Visual, but I was just thinking, I'm reaching that age and I have I don't know what they call bald leftist radicals that are senior citizens. But anyway.
But even that, it's a reversal from what the state of the nation is just a few years ago. You used to be like all Republicans are old white people, and
that's a good point.
And the liberals are like the young minority, the diverse crowd, and now the Hispanic crowd, the younger crowd, and a lot of the African American black men are all trending conservative.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what happened.
That's a good point, because it's funny how that was always the attack on Republicans, is they were old white guys, and certainly there's plenty of old white guys in the Senate and other places. But when you look at the diversity across the board, this does not seem to be a very diverse entity. And then when you look at why are all these people out here, and then who's paying for all this? I appreciate the fact that some members of Congress are actually passing passing legislation to say, to expose where's this money stream coming from. And what Ted Cruz was saying, senator from Texas, was that Mr. Soros is behind funding all this for this partying that's taking place. So it's just interesting. Again, it's the left is how they do what they do. And I think it's really more about creating division and chaos than it is actually having a platform to run on. I think the platform, again, if you boil it all down, is we don't like Donald Trump.
Right. You don't like the low gas prices. You don't like ending the war in the Middle East. Just name all the things you don't like, right?
Yeah. And he's the face of it all, so we hate him, and he's the king. But as we pointed out, this is ridiculous. To your comments just moments ago, we had a national election. And when you look at the map, this was a slam dunk for Donald Trump. He was elected legally. He was, over half of America voted for him. This has nothing to do with a king or any kind of a coup or any type of authoritarianism, because what you have here is a duly elected president by a supermajority. It's hard to put a king label on that. If that was our process, it's a normal presidential election. So the fact that you don't like what he's doing, or that there's certain elements of his policy that they're part of his platform that he ran on, just deal with it. Your candidate didn't win. That's America.
Well, the No Kings protest is. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to capture a lot of what the conservatives have been so good at, which is use like small images to communicate a very, very complex message. So they're trying to call Trump a king. Well, the problem with that is paradox in itself, because if he truly is a king, you wouldn't be free to go and protest the way you do.
Exactly.
And there would be, there would be attacks. There would be, like I said, tanks and police and secret police coming arresting the organizers and whatnot. And that's obviously what did not happen. And also, what's interesting is I saw a clip of people going out in the crowd and interviewing people and say, "Hey, why is this the No King protest?" Because Trump won through election. Yeah. And most people could not answer that one question. Yeah. And then eventually people settled down. Well, he's violating the checks and balances, which is very interesting right now because we are in the middle of a governmental shutdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of checks and balances.
So again, if Trump's a dictator, then all he has to do is say, "Well, we completely disregard, Congress, and I'm going to push my agenda through anyway."
Well, the Republicans have the executive branch, and someone would say the Republicans have appointed more Supreme Court justice. But even in Congress itself, even the Republicans control the House and the Senate, because we don't have 60 seats in the Senate, therefore there's a governmental shutdown. That is not a picture of a king. Right. That's a picture of restraint and honoring the Constitution and checks and balances and work
log jam
right now. Yeah. So I think most Americans look at the reality and they're just like, that No Kings thing is not a very compelling message. And Trump has some interesting response to it.
He always has interesting responses.
Which I can't believe you didn't see the video.
Well, I had opportunities to watch the video, but when I heard what the video was about, I thought, well, I don't know that I want to spend my time watching. Evidently.
He's wearing a crown. It's an AI generated video. He's wearing a crown, flying a jet, and he's flying over the marches and dumping fecal matters over the protesters,
Manure.
including one, I think it's Harry Sisson or whatever his name is. And I heard an interview with Trump. He's like, "I'm not king." He says, "What are you guys talking about?" I saw
he said, "I'm not king. I work too hard."
Yeah, he's basically, "I'm working my, whatever off to help this country." He's kind of like, so he's making light of this whole thing. He's like, "I am not a king. What are you guys talking about?"
Well, let's talk about another phenomenon, which is the modern day political meme, which Trump seems to master pretty well. Why the meme? We were talking earlier. What's the power of the meme as opposed, like for instance, when Trump used the sombrero with Senator Cory Booker, he got all agitated. Man, it was insulting or whatever. He seems to use that means as a modern day, tool of communication, which again, prior presidents haven't really. There haven't been memes, social media, all this kind of stuff to the degree that it is now. But why is that so powerful?
Yeah, and someone wrote an article on this. I forgot who, but basically. The thesis is that memes is a new manifesto. But I will add for basically our social media generation. No one has, especially young people, do not have the attention span to read a manifesto anymore. So what you do is you just get a meme. You get like a 10-second AI clip, or you get like one picture, and it just resonates so deeply. If you can draft that meme in a powerful way. With the whole sombrero meme or AI footage, basically Trump is saying no one take you seriously. And it just resonates on such a deep level. Even the AI jet dropping fecal matter, it's communicating a message that can be easily propagated.
It's kind of like the maxim, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yes.
Right? Like you can see it and get it without having to read the 1,000-word dissertation or, in your words, manifesto. So again, I think Trump realizes most people are not resonating with this whole no king things unless you're a senior citizen leftist progressive. And we saw some of the groups that are really behind this, the Move On org and indivisible groups that have been known for disrupting conservative events. This event, as this article says, ties to a broader leftist trends like power grabs through false accusations of fascism, erosion of freedoms via mob rule, the propagation of violence, seen as demonic attacks on God-ordained authority via multiculturalism and neo-Marxist division. So it's the same groups that are behind. They were behind the BLM protests. They were behind all the other things. It's the same power groups. But this was interesting. This was an article by Tyler O'Neill with the Daily Signal entitled "Why Are America's Teachers Unions Backing the No Kings Protest?" So we have the American Federation of Teachers, we have the National Education Association, both on their websites and with dollars supporting this event. So you wonder, what in the world do the teachers unions, who are supposed to be supporting and protecting teachers or students' interests, although we all know they actually protect teachers' interests and teachers' agendas, not the students' agendas. But it says here, teachers' unions have used their position of influence to push radical leftist ideologies such as critical race theory, which teaches that America is institutionally racist, and transgender ideology. And they oppose efforts to reform education that would return it back to the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. You look here at their how they actually spend their money. Both of these unions spend large amounts of money on political activism. In fact, the American Federation of Teachers spent roughly, ready for this, 13.8% of its budget. That translates to just under $47 million on political activities. And we know the political agenda they're promoting has nothing to do with anything that we as Christians support or that conservatives in general support. So here they're fleecing their teachers for union dues that are supposed to be used to represent students and the teachers, and yet, almost $47 million is going to support a very, very leftist ideology and leftist agenda. Same thing with the NEA, $2.9 million they spent on political activities. And again, we know where that's coming from. This was interesting, the National Education Association's Teacher of the Year said in July, quote, "I realize how deeply political our profession has always been." She said her job as a teacher of all things is deeply political. Now, since when is the job of a teacher deeply political? Unless you're pushing all kinds of crazy leftist ideologies.
Yes, it's interesting, how these are my thoughts on that. I have lots of thoughts on this.
Yeah, you're an educator. You've served as an educator.
Yes, and you and I both have educational,
Inklings.
Inklings, yes, that's a good way to
If
say it.
we weren't doing what we were doing, we would both be very
Probably
comfortable.
be in that realm. But, how George Soros a while ago, and he's a genius. He's super smart. He says, you know what? For me, where's the most bang for my buck is
Sure.
I'm gonna elect these attorney generals.
He's a reformer.
I'm gonna go to certain large cities, and I'm gonna help these radical left attorney generals who are gonna let criminals out. And I'm gonna that's a weak point that no one really sees us. I'm gonna help them win. And in many ways, he transformed America through that. That way of thinking, even a while ago, I don't know, it was through Dewey or whoever else, went into education, went into public education, whether it's university level or high school level. And there's this root, this foundation of liberalism, of humanism,
Yep.
of Marxism.
I forget which one of our founding fathers or political leaders. I think it may have been Abraham Lincoln. He said, "Whoever controls the classrooms of today is going to basically be leading the political direction of your nation in the future." So in other words, we're training up the future leaders, and whoever controls that ideology is going to dictate where the politics heads.
Yep.
And we're seeing that. I mean, we talked about that in our podcast a couple weeks ago when we said that all this poison, this anti-American hatred, and this leftist agitation that's happening across America in our universities is because of what's being taught in those university settings. And until we go back and reclaim our universities, we're going to keep raising up very expensively trained, leftist radicals who hate America and don't understand anything about our Western culture.
But the teacher union you're talking about, that's not even university level. That's primary school.
Oh yeah, all the way up through high school. Yeah.
Again, most kids has to go to high school. University to me is even less of a threat because that's kind of right now universities are less attractive than ever. However, everyone still has to go to middle school and high school. So there are deep roots even in there. Now it's very interesting because according to one of my favorite book, the book that made your world.
Yes. Visha Mangualavi.
Yeah, see, you read my mind because you saw in my mind I could not pronounce the author's
you were
name.
pulling for that. That's one name. I can't remember some of my kids' birthdays, but I can.
You remember that guy's name. He mentioned the idea of public education, of educating the masses, of helping prosperity and wealth go to everybody, came from biblical worldview, came from the West. It came from the church.
In terms of literacy.
Yeah, literacy.
Not in terms of pushing now it was used by Dewey and some of those radicals to say, look, we can actually shape the future students of America and future citizens of
indoctrination,
America.
Right,
exactly.
Right.
We can push an agenda and teach all of our students kind of the same thing we want them to learn and we want them to be. We can shape them for the future. Model citizens.
Well, historically, throughout ancient history, no government, no emperor, no king was like, oh, I'm going to educate the masses so they can one day be educated and rebel against me. No, we're going to burn the books instead. It's the Christian worldview that actually got people to say, no, we're going to educate people, we're going to train people, we're going to elevate people. Which, by the way, I saw a post that mentioned Charlie Kirk's favorite books or his reading list. Oh. That book, I started going through it, and that book was on there. The book that made your world. I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. So,
I'd like to see a copy of that because, whatever Charlie Kirk was digesting was probably some very, very good
Christianity is on there. Yeah. A lot of these ancient writings from our founding fathers on there. So anyway, Good to Great, a business book is on there. Anyway, it's very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But back to the public education. Like we got to reclaim public education. We got to have administrators, teachers, and educators who love the Constitution. Now there is a move right now on university, which is the free speech. The free speech movement, spearheaded by Charlie Kirk, is, I feel like, invading the college universities so that they can't be as Marxist as they want because they have to allow dissenting voices.
Well, and we talked about this dangerous coalition, and it really makes no sense from a worldview perspective because they don't share hardly anything in common. But it's this red-green coalition between Marxism, neo-Marxism, and Islam, and that's what's behind all this pro-Palestine, free Palestine movement, and you see them coming together and supporting one another. Now, of course, Marxism is atheistic, and then you have radical Islam, which is monotheistic. You don't say anything against Allah. To do so, brings death upon you, or if you burn the Quran, they will kill you. So here you got these rabid loyalists, Allah Akbar, before they blow up the building or whatever, combined with people who have no use for religion at all. And you look at the history of Marxism and all the deaths that have happened in the name of atheism, and it's a strange coalition. But the one thing that they both share is they can inflict bodily harm, pain, even death against their political opponents, all in the name of their particular revolution, right? And so we wonder why all this, embracing of political violence. It's part of what they believe. It's part of what their founders actually taught. And we're seeing this happen, over and over again. And I think these No Kings protests and other things like this that cause agitation and confusion are part of that marriage. All the craziness that broke out on our university campuses with students taking over buildings, and then you have the administration that's cowering and catering to these demands happening at our Ivy League schools, and this used to be the place where the next wave of exceptional leaders, the best and the brightest, right, were nurtured and trained to take the reins of liberty and justice and to lead our nation. And now you have people that are openly embracing, violence. In fact, we might want to touch on what's going on in the Virginia race. We talked about that on our last podcast. Give us the update there. I think the margins are closing from what I hear.
Yeah, and so it started, like we said last week, started with a thread of texting between Attorney General in Virginia, Jay Jones, I believe his name, with a Republican colleague, a moderate colleague, basically wishing the death of his political opponent. And not just that, but the death of his kids.
Yeah, whom you made the point he would actually bring with him occasionally to the State House,
the Speaker of the House, who was the person Jay Jones wanted him to die, wanted him to shot. He said, if I had two bullets, I had, I think the name's Gilbert, Pol Pot, and Hitler, I would shoot the Speaker of the House, his political opponent, twice. I mean, that's a very calculated statement to say to a moderate Republican. He's a Democrat. And then he talked about wishing that his kids, his political opponent's kids, would die in their mother's arms because only when there's pain will you do something different. And
I mean, I think about this like you and me. We both have kids. Like I'm sitting here basically telling you I would like to put two bullets in your head and see your kids die in their mother's arms. I mean, how would you... I mean, like, this is just insanity. This is like, this person's sick. You would never say something like that publicly. And if you did, even privately, and it was exposed, you would be like apologizing over yourself, bending over backwards to say, I can't believe I said that. It was so stupid. Please forgive me. I don't mean that, None of that.
Well, he did apologize. So in the debate
a lame apology.
Yeah, very lame apology. He blamed Trump, but in the debate with him and the current Attorney General who's running for re-election, I forgot the guy's name. The current Attorney General basically says, "Yeah, you apologize, but do you know how you can truly apologize? You truly are repentant. Drop out of the race." Because how are you going to have any type of, I'm paraphrasing, any type of moral authority to be the top law enforcement officer when you have these verbiage?
You've lost all credibility.
Which 100% agree. I mean,
if a child in a school system wrote that or said that to another student, that child would be removed from the school system. I mean, like you'd be expelled. If a teacher did that, you would be fired.
You'll be fired.
So, my goodness, this is, like you said, this is the top law enforcement officer. Like, there's no place for that. I mean, it shouldn't even be considered. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing a swing is that independents are even going, what?
Well, I will hope the Democrats
Well, exactly. But that's not going to happen because, as you pointed out, this is an ideological thing. This is their religion, and they're not going to acknowledge any, fault.
That's my whole point. That Democrat, including the Spanberger, who was the running for governor, has not come out and condemned or asked. She has condemned the text because it's easy to do that, but she has not asked the Attorney General candidate to withdraw from the race because the political party is greater than call for violence. The race has tightened. I don't know Winston Sears, the Republican gubernatorial candidate, will win. However,
I did hear it's a toss-up in her race.
It was the Democrat Spanberger had a huge lead. Now it's narrowing. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But
here's the other irony. Okay, the party that preaches tolerance, the party that preaches diversity, the party that's supposed to be the biggest advocates for Black Americans. Here we have an incredibly gifted Black American. She loves her country.
Military
veteran. The amount of vitriol she has received from the Democratic Party in terms of racist, vile, nasty comments about her, and it has nothing to do with the things that Democrats normally celebrate. It's the fact that she has an R after her name. And as soon as you have an R after your name, it doesn't matter that you're Black. It doesn't matter that you're a woman. It doesn't matter that this would be talk about history making. She would be the first Black woman governor in the state of Virginia, in the history of Virginia. So this should be one of those, we're going to break the glass ceiling moments, right? And something that you would think that the party would celebrate. But no, she's on the wrong side ideologically. So at the end of the day, all that stuff goes up in smoke and has zero credibility because if it's not their person, then those rules don't apply to other people. So here, you just mentioned freedom of speech and those types of things. Freedom of speech is just a tool to advance the leftist agenda. As soon as the speech goes against the agenda, they shut down those people. And we've seen that over and over again. So if you really care about free speech, you should make sure you're not a Democrat, because the Democratic Party today cares nothing about free speech. They're trying to shut down free speech every chance they get. Every time a conservative goes on a liberal university campus just to share their views, they get shouted down, attacked, pressured, canceled, blacklisted, whatever language you want to use. But basically, they're not allowed on campus because their presence is dangerous, right? Their voice is dangerous. And so free speech is continually shut down in these places. And, we should all be concerned about that. So.
Yeah. And what this illustrates to me is that the violence, the ideology that promotes violence, both in the Marxist and the liberal left ideology, is being exposed more and more. So it's interesting because people have been comparing the right wing violence and the left wing violence,
which is funny to me because it's there's political violence on both sides, and then you go, okay, list the top 5 examples of right wing political violence, and I can't even think of 2 examples. I can't, and then. When we get into the weeds, they don't have anything to say.
Well, the issue is, if you are a white, European descent American who live in the South, male, you're considered a right-wing violence. And again, this is a so shallow perspective. And if you're, a minority, then no, let's not talk about because there are wackos on all sides. They're crazy. They're psychopaths who voted for every single president. That's not my concern. If you think a few layers deeper, you think about is there ideological support to commit violence?
Right.
So, for example, in Christianity, you look at not only just the teachings of love your enemies,
right. But the Bible as a whole, Christ's teachings,
but the historical church during the Roman torture and terrorizing the Christians, what did they do? They lay down their lives and they transform the world through their sacrifice. I'm just saying, ideologically, there is no premise in Christianity for violence.
Right. Now, you might have somebody that says, I'm a Christian, or, whatever, who goes out and commits heinous crimes, violent acts. But our argument would be they're living inconsistent with the ideology they espouse. Whereas those on the left, whether you're Marxist or whether you're Islamic, both of your founders, on the Marxist side, you got to have multiple founders, whether it's Marx or Lenin or whomever, but they all espoused violence for the sake of the revolution that was going to bring about a better future.
There is ideological persuasion or pathway to violence. That's very clear.
Yep.
Whereas the so-called Christians, we would say, or even the people who advocate violence on behalf of Christianity, will say, well, they're actually heretics. They're perverting the truth.
Exactly.
So these are all distinctions that people don't think about.
We could take what's happening in Nigeria, for instance, the genocide that's happening with radical. I don't even want to use the word radical because it sounds like we're justifying. These are Muslims who are slaughtering Christians, just cold-blooded, slaughter. And it's a picture of what happens in many, many nations across the globe. It's not the Christians that are aggressively slaughtering Muslims. It is the Muslims who are slaughtering the Christians. And they're doing it because their leader espoused that, justified that in jihad, holy war. So the point again, when there's an ideological endorsement from the leaders to kill other people who don't agree with your revolution and the ideas behind your revolution, and that's what we're seeing today.
Well, we talk about that before. We talk about is because human lives based on ideology, when they're not part of your religion or your tribe, are seen as evil or worthless.
Right. Or enemies.
Or enemies.
Yep.
They're in the Marxism, it's like, no, you are part of the corrupt system that we must destroy. Think about the French Revolution, right? We talk about that. It's interesting. Yep. I saw a picture of a guillotine during the No King's protest, and I thought, man, that sounds familiar to the French Revolution.
Exactly.
Whereas Christianity, we're taught everyone's made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, whether they agree or disagree with you, whether they're acting,
treat them with respect.
You still, because they carry the image of God with them, which is the ultimate philosophy that backs the sanctity of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's not a surprise. You look at even a lot of the signs from the No King's protests. The signs themselves were violent. The signs themselves. There was another sign basically advocating the murder of a president of the United States. So this kind of stuff, I think, we tend to be peace-loving folks, as we should be. But there's a time, though, when our peacefulness needs to rise up to action. And I'm not talking about violent action. I'm simply talking about standing up and saying enough is enough. That's why, I so appreciate the fact that this administration is bringing order to our communities, trying to restore public safety, trying to make sure people that are here illegally are deported so that there's a rule of law. All of these things the left absolutely hates. But those of us who believe in Scripture and who believe in the rule of law and who really want peace for all, a peaceful community is not just for people who share our faith. It's for everybody. We want everybody to be able to live peacefully. The problem is those other ideologies, as we pointed out, don't embrace the same values because they don't start from the same assumptions. They don't have the same worldview, which we get right back to the fact that diversity is not what makes America beautiful. It's unity amidst diversity. It's unity under a biblical worldview and an understanding of rights and liberties that come from God. And as you pointed out, the sanctity of human life. Why do we have human rights? It's because humans are valuable, because they're made in the image and likeness of God. So until we restore order, and right now order is requiring, they're calling Trump an authoritarian. Well, he's not being authoritarian. He's not like some violent dictator. He's simply demanding that the laws be obeyed in our communities. And that's viewed as authoritarian because we've had lawlessness for so long. So, of course, it's a shock to everybody on the left. Of course, they don't know what to do because we actually have a leader who's not putting his finger up in the political winds to see which way it's blowing. He's actually doing what he said he would do. And, you see these things on social media. Are you ashamed you voted for President Trump? No, we're not ashamed. He's actually doing what most Americans wanted done, which is close our borders, protect our streets, bring back law and order and tranquility in our communities. And that's exactly what's happening. Although right now it is painful because there's so much lawlessness. It is painful, but painful but necessary.
Well, I look at what's happening with not just the Middle East, but the other wars he has kind of mediated through. Imagine America approach all those volatile situations. I'm talking about Pakistan, India, and Middle East, and even right now Ukraine and Russia. And basically, we have no military. We have no strength. We have no threat of actually. We have no missiles. We have no one would. There would be no peace because of this. No one would take us seriously. Yep. It just won't happen. Yep. So it's very interesting. We like to be so simple in our thinking. Be like, oh no, peace means that we got to get rid of all cops and all police and all laws and just all these different things. It reminds me of the guy running for New York mayor. But truth is, peace through strength has actual meaning. People respect you. You can actually get peace when the police has guns. Yep. You can actually have children running around their neighborhood when people go to jail for doing bad things. That leads to a suburb in which I let my kids play out and play. I don't have to worry about anything. That's a huge blessing that comes through strength.
Absolutely.
So somebody needs to have that strength. And we like to go and enjoy the peace and curse the people who actually have to go exercise strength, and not recognizing that we're actually benefiting from that.
Absolutely. You talked about all the source-appointed district attorneys and prosecutors and so forth. What we're seeing is, you have just horrific crimes committed. I saw the one guy that snuck into somebody's home and stabbed their 10-year-old son in the head with a knife. This guy, in my opinion, should get the death penalty. Instead, he had a very shortened sentence and is now out on parole. And if you're the family that lost your 10-year-old to this just senseless, demonic act of premeditated violence, that's not justice, and that's not bringing peace and tranquility, and that's actually caring more about this psychopath who did this than it is about this 10-year-old boy who's now dead and about his family who has to live with the consequences. This is happening over and over. Prosecutors who won't prosecute. And so we have people who should not be on the streets who are let back out and then are committing horrific crimes and then getting a slap on the wrist. So this again goes back to you have to know who the good guys are. You have to know who the bad guys are. You have to know what the law is and that those laws are good laws, and then those laws have to be enforced. And it gets all the way back to our worldview again. What is good? If the government is supposed to promote good and prosecute evil and punish evil, it gets right back to the definition of what are those things. And if we lose the Bible and we lose our objective standard, this is a kind of kangaroo courts that we end up with, and good, innocent, law-abiding citizens are the ones who pay the price. So a lot of work to be done, and not only in our government, but in our courts as well. And you can see so much, this is why we talked about this before, so much is at stake in a national election and who becomes president, because that person gets to appoint all kinds of judges across our nation that we're stuck with a lot longer than whoever that president is, right? Because they don't have term limits. So we just get them forever and ever and ever until they do something that we can finally get them out, But anyway, thank you all for joining us. We look forward to our time together next week. Any final volley here?
Oh, I think we share our hearts.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next Thursday.